All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Thanks everyone for being here and thank you for your time in joining us. Our presentation today is 5 ways to save the day if your client is victimized by ransomware. You also see on our title slide here the Gartner 2015 Cool Vendor logo. We were a 2015 Gartner Cool Vendor in business continuity and disaster recovery. And also keep an eye out this week, Gartner will be releasing their Magic Quadrant for 2016, so keep an eye out for that in disaster recovery as a service. All right, my name's Carla Federico and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Infrascale. I have all my contact info here for you. If you have any questions or anything that comes up after the presentation you'd like to reach out, please do feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And then let's take a look at the agenda for today. So first we are going to talk about ransomware trends in 2016, what we've been seeing lately and why. Then we'll talk about how to save the day from ransomware, so our subject matter for today. We'll talk about how to implement a proper solution against ransomware, and then we'll have a Q&A. So there is a question tool in this. Feel free to use that throughout the presentation to ask questions, and we'll get to that Q&A. Also, there is a handout section. So before the end of the presentation here, I'm going to just load a copy of the slides into that handout section, so you'll be able to grab that there. And then also, we are going to be posting a recording of this video. So we are recording, and you'll be able to access a copy in the Partner Resource Center very shortly. All right, with that, let's go ahead and dive into the presentation. So first we're going to start with just sort of a quick understanding of really what ransomware is, because it can take several different kinds of forms. But essentially, ransomware is a type of malware that denies access to a device or files until a ransom has been paid. So it's going to encrypt a user's files and forces them to pay a fee to that hacker to regain access to their own data. But an even bigger problem sets in because ransomware encrypts the files on a workstation, and then it can travel across the network and encrypt files on network drives as well. So that's really how we've been seeing just one infected user bring down a whole department or even an entire organization. And since computers have been in use, programmers have been able to create this malicious software. So here's an evolution of ransomware. And even earlier than 1986 or 1989, like you see on the left side of this slide, the creeper virus, that one was created in 1971. So that's a really early example of how quickly malware can spread through your systems. And then you see through 2006, 2010, you see the high-speed encryption node there. So really the proliferation of malware is moving at an alarming rate. By 2007, as much malware was produced in that one single year than had been produced in the previous 20 years altogether. So it's pretty scary. Towards the right of your screen, you see CryptoLocker, you see LOCKY. We're going to talk a little bit more about these in just a moment. But where does that leave us right now? Well, now it's 2016, and there are 2 types of organizations these days. One is those that have been breached, and the other is those that have been breached but don't know it yet. And that's because of some of these trends. Let's take a look at here. So ransomware does get activated by a single user. They let that file in, and it starts modifying all the files on the system until a triggered message for the ransom demand. And that ransom demand increases as the hours pass if you don't respond as well. So let's take a look at some of these trends. So the first one, almost 3,000 new malware modifications were reported in the first quarter of 2016. And really, we know that they're getting away with it as well because of the amount of money paid in ransoms. So the FBI reported over $200 million has been paid in ransom in just the first 3 months of the year. Compare that with the total of $25 million paid in all of 2015, all of last year. And now when this does happen, over about 3/4, so 72%, just about 3/4 of ransom victims were unable to access their data for 2 days. Because once that ransom's paid, then you start the decryption, and then you have the long process of waiting for all of your files to be accessible again. So the quickest time period is really 2 days, and that can last up to 5 days. So you really need to ask yourself, can my business afford that? Can I risk being down for 2 to 5 days? I mean, I would say that the high majority would say no. I can't really imagine any business that could last that. And then 34% of small to medium-sized businesses fell prey to phishing emails in 2015. And that's one of the biggest causes, but we are going to talk about a few more as we get into more of the presentation. So we'll come back to a little bit of that as well. So here's one big problem with ransomware. You have no idea for weeks or months. So it works slowly and starts with the old files on your system based on the last date opened or the last date modified, and then starts modifying all the files on the system until you see a triggered message like this for the ransom demand. And once those files are encrypted, you'll see that the hackers will then display a screen or web page like this on how to pay to unlock the files. And you can see actually on the red one, which is the largest, you might be able to read it, but if not, it says that the ransom is $300 here, and that's where they used to start. So in the past, ransoms would be about $300 to $500 dollar range, something like that. But then fast forward to 2016, companies now are being hit with ransoms in the thousands of dollars. And then paying that ransom, it means paying an e-currency, a cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin. And so again, then those hackers verify the payment. Hopefully they do provide you with a decryptor software, and that's when that computer starts that long process of decrypting the files that we just mentioned on that last slide. Can take 2 to 5 days. And then on top of all of that, there are so many different ransomware strands in circulation. CryptoLocker is a big one that we've seen. It targets computers running Windows, and then it restricts access to any infected computer. We've been seeing it spread through fake emails, and those emails were designed to really mimic the look of legitimate businesses. So they were coming through as phony FedEx and phony UPS tracking notices. Let's see what else here on this slide. Ransom 32 is another one. So this is a variety of a ransomware as a service. So this is really scary because it effectively puts the power to create ransomware into the hands of just about anyone, really regardless of any of their technical know-how. So it's really dangerous because it's encoded entirely using JavaScript. So it means it can be used to target computers running Windows, Mac, OS X, and Linux. Lots of others, like you see on the screen here, many strands of ransomware out there. And LOCKY is another one. We've all heard about this quite recently in the news, and we've heard about this one quite often. The LOCKY ransomware strain is going to rename all of your important files. They'll all have the extension .locky and then encrypts them all. And this one, LOCKY, is really changing the game. The reason is first and foremost, LOCKY has a worldwide reach. It's targeting a worldwide audience. So businesses and organizations in Europe, in let's see, Japan, in New Zealand, in Australia have all been targeted by these attacks. And this infection has been through spam email campaigns. So these are disguised as invoices, and they're essentially Word documents attached to the email that contains a malicious macro in that fake invoice. So not only those countries that I mentioned, but closer to home, Amazon users have been targeted by a massive phishing campaign as well. So this one was estimated to have sent out 30 to 100 million spam messages, and those were just simply claiming to be Amazon.com shopping order updates. And so LOCKY is really, it's targeting businesses, which is really a bigger problem because it's encrypting files on that first workstation, but then traveling across the entire business network, encrypting files on the network drives, And so one LOCKY infected user can bring the whole entire organization to a halt. And that's because what we've seen, just another one of these trends of ransomware, is that in the beginning days of ransomware, hackers really only went for consumers in their individual files and folders. But these strains of ransomware are increasingly infecting businesses' systems and then spreading and having that network effect. So it's really up to the ante on what we've been seeing lately with ransomware. So how do you know if you're infected? And then how do you know what to do? And most importantly, what we're going to get to today is how to prevent an attack. So here are some of the warning signs if you are infected. If you suddenly can't open normal files, if you see one of those ransom screens pop up, if you see a countdown until the ransom price increases, or any of those types of scenarios, then you'll know that, of course, you may be infected with some malware, with ransomware. And so in most common scenarios, what happens is the attack starts because a user opens a malicious email attachment, installs a virus onto their desktop, starts encrypting all their files, and then a lot of times we see that hackers will send a file with multiple extensions, and they try to hide the true type of file that you're receiving. So if the user opens an email attachment or maybe clicks on a link or starts a software download without verifying the authenticity of it, then that's when that ransomware infection begins. So, all right, what can be done, right? This is what we're here to talk about today. Of course, it's important to have antivirus, but that's more like a firewall to stop things from coming in. And if you lack sophisticated cybersecurity infrastructure for anti-malware to stop things once they're already in your system, then you're at risk. So now that we have a great understanding of where the ransomware is coming from, how it infects our networks, and what trends have been happening with ransomware lately, now let's shift and talk about how we're going to effectively and affordably take the proper preventative measures, because you don't want to be stuck with that FBI recommendation, just pay up. So let's get you a new set of best practices and really prevent this from happening to you. All right, but I have talked quite a bit, so I'd love to hear from you before we get into this next section. So I'm going to launch a quick poll. Let me launch that now, and you should see that pop up on your screen. So here, just simply asking, have you been affected by ransomware? When it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? Yes, I've been a victim of ransomware, or not just I've been a victim of ransomware, but one of my clients has been a victim of ransomware. One of my customers has been a victim of ransomware. B, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. Or C, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. So far, we have 80% of you who voted, so I'll leave this up here another minute. We've got 85% of you have voted. And wow, so far, even though we haven't had everyone vote yet, we're at about 85%, but it looks like 60% of you are saying, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware, or one of my clients has been a victim of ransomware. And then less than half, only 40%, are saying, no, I haven't experienced this type of security threat. So I'm interested in hearing from that 60% of you. What happened in that case, and how did you at the time, when was it, and how did you resolve it at that time? Okay, great. I'll wait for some of those comments to come through the questions tool. Let me go ahead and close this poll now that we have the high majority have voted. Thank you for your participation in that as well. I'll do a quick share of the results. So we have 60%, yes, I have been a victim of ransomware, or one of my customers has been a victim of ransomware. B was 40% of you said, no, I have not experienced this type of security breach. And nobody said, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware, which is, you could probably tell that's sort of a trick answer in there, because I think it is pretty clear that all of us are at risk, and everyone has critical data. Everyone has irreplaceable data. So that is really, really important, and I'm glad that everyone today does understand the importance of it. All right, let me go ahead and hide these poll results. I'm seeing some of the questions and comments come through. Several clients that decided, this is from Andrew, he says, several clients that decided not to go on contract IT services but had backups that we just put into place were able to recover from. So they were able to recover from backup. One client refused to have backup as, quote, they didn't need them. They were hit with, sorry, I'm just laughing at that. They didn't need, someone who thinks that they don't need backup, not, this was actually very serious and unfortunate. They were hit with crypto a while back in September 2014 when it was first becoming big. So that client, I'm sure, has changed their tone now, Andrew, is my guess. All right, let me go ahead, hide these results so that we can get back into the presentation here. Should be seeing, let's verify again that you guys can see the screen again now here. Let me take a look at the screen sharing. Okay, yes, and the screen sharing does, it just lets me know that the screen sharing is back on. For whatever reason, you cannot see the next slide here, let me know. It's called Avoiding Ransomware. So, avoiding ransomware, of course, BDR is backup and disaster recovery. And backup and disaster recovery can protect you, but only if you do it right. So, for example, in Andrew's case, it sounds like one client, Andrew, everything was in place correctly to be able to roll back to a previous backup. But we're going to talk about backup and disaster recovery, and we're also going to talk about on-demand failover. So backup isn't your only option, but let's go through and talk about a couple of the options that you have to avoid ransomware and what to do to work proactively against ransomware. So right now, these are what the options tend to be for most if you get infected. They look at the options as, you know, I could either pay the ransom or I can restore systems back to a point before the infection. But there are lots of questions that can come up with this as well. You know, how long would it take you to restore all of your systems to pre-infection? And, you know, how much would that downtime cost? Would it be costlier than paying the ransom? Which option is more disastrous? So yes, while it is one option, it's not the only option. But, however, if you don't have access to any recent backup, then you'll likely have no choice but to pay the ransom. All of that takes time, and we all know time is money. So let's talk about what to do if you get infected, and then we'll talk about some of the other remediations. So first thing you should do if you get infected is really just get that machine off the network. You want to stop the malware from spreading, and you should be assuming that that malware could make use of the internet connection, it's spreading to the other users. You just want to isolate that machine from the entire network. So that's first, most important. So isolate the machine, and then next, reset your BIOS time. So in some instances, you can set the clock back. According to Privacy PC, they said that IT admins don't need to be afraid of that ransomware countdown timer if you just set your BIOS time back. So it's going to give you more time to calm down, recover your key files, eliminate the malware. So it's more time to prepare your backups and prepare your recovery. And then here on what to do if you get infected. Third is, if you're hit with malware, you want to roll back from a previous backup. So having that recent backup is going to make it really easy for you to restore operations as painlessly as possible. It's saving you time and saving you money for your business. Now, here is a couple of screenshots. This is my backup and recovery account with Infrascale, and by default, Infrascale keeps everything. So that is a feature that I hope that everyone knows on today's webinar, being an Infrascale partner, but maybe you don't. So just to be really clear with that, because it is a very important part, by default, Infrascale keeps everything forever. And so the importance of that forever archiving is really critical, because most backup and disaster recovery systems, they don't offer that. They age content out after a few weeks, maybe a month. But we already learned, and we talked about how ransomware can take months to get into your systems discreetly. So it's not just the idea of having any old backup system in place. You need a backup system with forever archiving also built in. So if you are using multiple different vendors in addition to Infrascale with some of your customers and clients, keep that in mind. Do they need that protection against ransomware? So they're going to have that forever archiving built in with Infrascale, which is really critical. If you're using any other BDR systems, out there, definitely look into that, because we're the only ones offering that right now. Okay. All right. So here, again, my screenshots, I can roll back to any date I choose here. I can back up with a low RPO, recovery point objective, and low RTO, recovery time objective, since I regularly back up my machine. So I can just recover my useful files and keep working, right? But here is my Infrascale dashboard as well. So it's obviously not just the backup and recovery software on my own individual machine, but this snapshot of my dashboard, where of course I can come and view any activity alerts that I need to, access reporting and monitoring that I need, et cetera, et cetera. And this I know you guys are familiar with. What you might not be familiar with is this, the account level details. So in your dashboard, in a backup account, you get account level details, which has several different analytics tabs. You can see here the last 24 hours, last 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. So you can get all of the analytics on which machine has the most changes. And we already talked about earlier that ransomware is getting into your system and it's changing the files on that machine. So what we did is we took all of these analytics and we created a brand new monitoring alert. So this is definitely something that's going to be new to everyone, because we released this just in the last couple of weeks or so. So this new alert, it's called anomaly detection. And this is essentially how it works and what it does. If you have a large number of newly modified files, then you want to know what type of event happened, what is touching all of my data, and you know, what is going on. So an average backup of changed files will just continue as a normal backup. But an unusually large backup, that's going to trigger an anomaly alert. So that's why we're calling it anomaly detection. So that anomaly alert will be triggered to you, the admin, if you're subscribed to those monitoring alerts. And then in this alert, you're going to know, hey, I need to investigate this, see what could be happening, consider that you know, one of those machines may have ransomware, and then take the appropriate action. So let's take a closer look at this. This is actually anomaly detection in action. So let's take a look at how to set it up and how to get it running. So here in the dashboard, to configure the anomaly set, just go to the settings tab and in monitoring. Here on this monitoring page, you see enable anomaly detection. And then just next to it here, the threshold is essentially when that warning is released. So the warning is released when your threshold is passed. We calculate a rolling average of the modified files over time for each device. And then if the modified file count for a backup surpasses that threshold, you'll get the warning. So if you see an event, of course, investigate it. You can also open the details here to see things like backup duration, total files processed, how many modifications were made, all of that here in the monitoring details. And then you can also download the logs if you just select the manage action if you want to investigate at a file level. So you can do that as well. Typical users, again, we see maybe 5 to 10 modified files per day because so much work is done online, right? So anything 3 to 4 times that is going to be cause for investigation, okay? All right, so now that we have seen how anomaly detection can be set up and how it works, let's take a look at another option, because what we've been talking about is simply rolling back from a backup. But again, that's not the only option. And this is where disaster recovery as a service comes in, DRaaS. It lets you quickly fail over all of your customers' systems, applications, servers, and it supports DR to be on demand. So on-demand disaster recovery. And if all of you are not yet making use of this, then you really do want to take a closer look. And of course, this is exactly how Infrascale does it. So you're already familiar with Infrascale and some of our offerings, but if you're not familiar with all of our offerings, this is really the most important couple of slides that you want to look at. So let's take a look at how disaster recovery can be on demand. This is a scenario where you've got all of your customers, their end users are working along, and then suddenly, unexpectedly, they get a ransomware attack. They see one of those ransom screens pop up. So with on-demand failover, you can simply log in from any browser, and you can do this even if you're on a laptop, a tablet. You can do it from a smartphone if it were to happen in the middle of the night on a Saturday night and you're in bed. So from anywhere, you can roll back to a previous date and instantly recover a clean version of the entire environment. So not just files and folders, okay? All the servers, applications, the entire working environment. And that way, everyone keeps working, and this whole process happens in just mere seconds to minutes, just depending on how much data there is and what types of data. So let's see, I see a couple of questions coming in. Will ransomware always give a pop-up? Andrew, yes, ransomware will be giving you information. Ransomware works in that it lets you know that you have been infected, and then it tells you this is how much the ransom is, and this is how long you have to pay it. So it always gives you that type of warning. All right, let's take a look at that on-demand failover in just a little more detail. Let's look at it a little bit more closely. So traditional backup flow, you have your backup, and you have your production and your backup server next to it. So your production box is then copying data over to some storage. So here you're copying it to, maybe you're copying it to the cloud, maybe on-prem disk, a tape drive, any offsite storage. So it's just copying data over the wire there, and then when a disaster happens, which is that that fire, that alert symbol, so let's say this is the ransomware attack, then you need to copy that data back out of storage, rolling back from a previous date before the ransomware was affecting your system, and then you have to reconfigure. So all of this takes a really long time. So you recover in days. We looked at that earlier, 2 to 5 days. And who can really afford that? So DRaaS is very, very different. In DRaaS, you don't want to be, copying everything twice or more, moving data back and forth. You just want to be able to spin up a working environment where that data is. So here, of course, you do have your production and backup. You simply just copy to your offsite storage, and then from there you can virtualize and create up to 200 machines on the fly and reconstruct your data center infrastructure where your data is sitting. So you don't need to be copying back and forth. It's really, really important here because of those steps that we saw earlier on how ransomware has evolved. Yes, the primary issue used to be just individual data loss when ransomware was targeting individuals and consumers. But now, like we already discussed and we have a really good handle on and understanding, is that ransomware is now attacking businesses. It's spreading over entire networks. It has a worldwide reach. So this means that ransomware represents not only the threat of data loss, but also business interruption, downtime, loss of business. So what Infrascale is aiming to solve, our entire mission here, is to eradicate downtime and focus on that business continuity for you. Okay, let's see. Any questions on this slide? Because I know that there's a lot going on here. I tried to break it down piece by piece, but this is really very, very important. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands this. You know, whereas backup was the best solution when the issue was only data loss, now we're all facing business interruption, so DR becomes a far better solution. And of course, what we're going to be seeing in the next 5 to 10 years, backup and recovery is going to be disappearing, and it's going to be replaced by on-demand failover and DRAS solutions. So sure, we do have a backup and recovery solution for you, which is great, but what you should be looking at is a failover solution. All right, I don't see any questions coming through on that, so I'll go ahead and move over to the next slide. Now, we already talked earlier about that proactive alerting with anomaly detection. No other BDR solution out there today has that. Really, what people are doing now is just waiting to get infected and then quickly trying to scramble to, you know, either pay the ransom or roll back to a previous date. And not only do we have that anomaly detection that gives you that proactive warning ahead of time, Infrascale also, and hopefully this is kind of a recap for a lot of you, we also have that double-blind encryption, so that security is enables ultra-safe encryption as well. You have private key options, so security is very important to us, security and privacy, of course. Protection for servers, workstations, endpoints, everything end-to-end, unlimited archiving, unlimited test recoveries to ensure that all the policies you set are working exactly the way you want and expect them to, and then 24/7 support 365 days per year. All right, with that, I think some of you may have seen this, but if not, if it's new to you, we're already protecting thousands of businesses globally with all of our geographically dispersed data centers. Here, each of these red dots represents a business that we protect. So you can see, of course, the US, Canada, very heavily red here on this map, Europe, the UK, Australia, but you can see how many different businesses are represented by each of these red dots. We're protecting 1 million devices and counting, which is protecting over 100 petabytes of data across 20 billion data objects. I also mentioned, since we have the Gartner logo here, that I'll make sure to send a copy to everyone who's on the webinar here. When it comes out later this week, the Gartner Magic Quadrant is going to have a lot of great information, so I'll send that out to you guys and share that with you. You can also find it on our website as soon as it is published. It will be out this week. All right, with that, I'd like to offer everyone on the line here, if you're not currently making use of disaster recovery as a service, I want to get you a free evaluation for that. If you're just using backup and disaster recovery, then I really do hope that from today's webinar you want to look into a failover solution. So I'd love to have you test it out for yourself. You can make use of that and take advantage of this by either just typing into the question tool and let me know, just say yes, I'd like this offer, or you can always email me. Carla.federigo@infrascale.com is my email address, so I'd love to hear from you there as well. But I would like to do one quick poll again, because I want to hear from you guys. You're probably getting sick of hearing from me. So this next poll that I'm launching here is, when it comes to Infrascale, would you like to hear more from your account manager? Yes, I'd like to learn how I can resell failover DRAS. Yes, educational ransomware or BDR info would be helpful. Or C, no, I'm satisfied with my current Infrascale offerings and I'm all set. So give everyone a minute to answer this poll. Great, we've got 75% who voted so far. Okay, great, we have nearly everyone who has voted so far very quickly. Thank you, everyone, for participating. All right, On this one, it looks like we have 50% say yes, I'd like to learn how I can resell failover DRAS. 25% are saying yes, educational ransomware and PDR info will be helpful. And then 25% no, I'm satisfied with my current Infrascale offerings, which is great to hear as well. Okay, let me hide this poll then, just close this poll from there. And with that, I want to jump into the Q&A now. So we have one of our sales engineers on the line here. Our senior sales engineer, his name is Aaron Jordan, and he's going to pull up the Q&A, and if anyone has more technical questions, please feel free to ask. With that, let me pass it over to Aaron.
Sure, thanks for that, Carla. So yeah, guys, if you have any technical questions regarding anything that Carla just talked about right now, please fill in the questions section, and I will be happy to answer them as I get them.
And it has been quiet today throughout the presentation. We haven't had too many questions and comments come through. I read a couple of them earlier, but I don't see any technical questions coming through right now. So we'll, of course, give everyone a moment to get those questions in, and I'm just actually, while you guys do that, I'm going to load these slides into the handout section, so you can be sure to grab a copy of that as well. And let's see, Aaron, I don't see many questions coming through.
Right, looks pretty quiet today.
Pretty quiet, guys. Well, hopefully that's a good sign. Hopefully it's because everything that you guys wanted to hear was covered. Okay, well, let's see. I'm having, looks like the software today isn't accepting the PDF of these slides. So what I'm going to do is I'll email you guys the slides here. It's just a simple drag and drop, but it's not accepting my file. So I'll email that out to everyone. And thank you so much for being here today. I really do appreciate your time. Keep an eye out for that email from me with a copy of these slides. And then again, the replay video will be in the Partner Resource Center shortly. I have a couple of other reports and interesting info, so I'll just send that through as well. Those of you who said, yes, I want more educational info, of course, we will be reaching out to you with that. And those of you interested in reselling failover DRAS, your account manager will be reaching out to you shortly. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. Thank you for being here and your time today. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Bye.